Hi, all. This presentation is on technology and active learning. I am Angie Hodge Zickerman from Northern Arizona University in the United States of America, and my co-presenter is
Cindy York. I'm at Northern Illinois University, and we have a helper on here. Dr. Max Anderson is our helper today.
I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about myself non-professionally and then move into the professional. So my name is Angie, as I said before, and a little bit about myself. Cindy and I actually met at Purdue University, that's the P there, in Indiana, in the United States of America. And her and I took a graduate class together on qualitative research, and that since then I've been doing a lot of projects on active learning and technology. In my free time, I also like to run and travel. Travel has been a little bit less in the years past because of COVID. Those are also things Cindy and I like to travel together as we're doing our research. So we're a little sad that we're not in Greece this week, but hopefully we'll be able to join you all in person sometime soon. And then there's some pictures of my family. The one picture is my husband and I with my now 2-year-old. He's a little smaller in that picture on his back. It's one of the reasons my camera's off. We actually don't have childcare today, so might be able to come on later, but not yet. And then I also have 2 stepsons who are 14 and 10. A little bit about myself professionally. I've been teaching using active learning since 2007, and that's also when I received my PhD. So right away, I kind of jumped into active learning. Before then, I would say I did more interactive lectures. But my first university, North Dakota State, really wanted me to use active learning. And we'll talk about more what that means and looks like to each of us as we go on in the presentation. I have been teaching teachers online since 2017. This was mainly started asynchronously with teachers who are out in the field and wanting to get their master's degree in math education, both content and pedagogy courses. And I've been teaching fully remotely since March 2020 when COVID hit and we were out of childcare, and I am also home with an asthma condition. So I have been fully online, part asynchronous, part synchronous, content education courses, a little bit of everything since March 2020.
And I'm Cindy York. So I'm an associate professor at Northern Illinois University, and my PhD is in instructional technology. And so I work with Angie a lot with mathematics and technology, combining the two of them, since instructional technology can attach itself to any field. I was a 4th and 5th grade teacher at one point, and I've been teaching using technology since 1994. And I've been teaching teachers online since 2004, and have been doing this research on mathematics, active learning, and technology since 2015. We want to start off by talking about a little story. In your house, hopefully, there is a tool. Now, I realize this is an international conference, so this tool might not look the same in everybody's house, but it's had pretty much the same use since it was created a long, long time ago. And so at this point, we would usually say, discuss amongst yourselves, see if you can figure out what that tool is. So if you want to do that, go ahead and pause the video for a second and think about what you think that tool might be. Turns out that tool is the toilet. So why are we talking about the toilet? Because what I like to do is say, here I have this computer chip, and I've now put this computer chip in your toilet. What things can your toilet do differently now because it has a computer chip in it? We want to have you think outside the box. Okay, so now we have this computer chip in our toilet. Some ideas people have told us in the past were, well, it would heat the seat for me. It would bring a magazine out in front of me that it knows I want to read. It would clean it automatically. These are better, faster, easier ideas that we call. And so it still has the same use. So how do we fundamentally change the use of the toilet now that it has this computer chip? What if it took your sample, it analyzed it, it sent the results to your doctor, automatically it put a follow-up appointment on your calendar because it knew that you needed to have a doctor's appointment? Okay, that fundamentally changed the role that tool, the toilet, plays. It is no longer just taking your waste and getting rid of it. How do we fundamentally change education because we have computers in our lives? So this is something that Angie and I discuss a lot of. We don't want to just do things better, faster, easier on the computer. So instead of having a worksheet with paper and pencil in front of us, we now have one in front of us electronically. That's just better, faster, easier. But how do we change how we're teaching because we have these computers now and this technology in most students' hands?
And so, in thinking about how can we fundamentally change education, and especially when some of us are remote now, some of us are in person, we're going to go back to the question, what is active learning? So, what does it mean to actively learn? I put the picture of my toddler there, which is now a year old, that picture, for a reason. Like when he goes out, he's always kind of active learning. He's looking at the world and using these four pillars, some more than others at other times. But how can we put this active learning into our classroom? And our definition of active learning, we're going to use these four pillars: collaboration for sense making. So, not just saying, hey, work together, work with a friend, but how can we design learning activities, and especially using technology, so our students can work together to make sense of the material they're using? Our field that we're going to keep referring back to is mathematics, but whatever you're doing, what are you working together to make sense of that subject matter or mathematics? And since we are focusing on math, engagement with rich mathematics. So not just here, add 1 + 1 and get 2, multiply a bunch of numbers, and maybe a calculator can do it faster than you. Instead, can we engage with rich mathematics, meaning like some tasks that make us think, problem solve, really dig in to the math and kind of feel what it means to do mathematics, not just do something faster and easier. With this, if you've seen some two pillars of active learning, maybe in the past with inquiry-based learning, there have been two new pillars added. The one is the instructor inquiry into student thinking. And what this means, and especially think about it in a remote setting, is how can the instructor find out what the students are thinking? So students aren't just doing work to do work and keep it in their own heads, but how can you gauge and assess what your students are doing by the tasks that you give them? So that's our part of our definition of active learning. And lastly, but probably one of the most important, is also to have an equitable instructional practice. So in active learning, we want students working together to make sense of things, working with rich subject matter, and instructors being able to kind of see what's happening in their brains, and all of this going on in a very equitable, safe classroom and instructional practice. So how can we achieve these four pillars of active learning in an online environment? And I think this is in particular very timely right now, thinking about some being remote, some being asynchronous, some being synchronous, and then also thinking back into your own classroom. So as we're thinking about this, we're going to give you another slide, and then the next slide, we're going to actually have you kind of jot some of these things down. So it's some things to think about. And after this, maybe you pause your slide for about 5 minutes. If we were in an actual workshop doing this together, we could do some think, pair, share, but just on your own. Are we teaching mathematics or other subjects while incorporating technology? Are we using technology to make our classes more active and engaging, especially going back to those four pillars? And are instructors or our instructors overwhelmed by all the technology options out there, or that they're required to use? So how can we go back to that active learning, those four pillars, and really thinking about engaging with technology, and how do we pick the right technologies? So take some time to think about those. Pause your video. Okay, and then we're going to brainstorm a little bit again. So hopefully you had some time to think, and you could probably, pause these for as long as you want. We say 2 minutes here and there, but we really want you to take as much time to think as possible. And then Cindy, when she comes back, is going to help share where to put some of these on the discussion board so you can share with others as well. So if we were in real time with everyone together, we'd brainstorm together some ideas and examine some pedagogies behind technology integration in math classes. So we're going to go through a list in a bit to think about, what does it mean to use technology in your classroom? So take some time, whether it's 2 minutes, whether you want 5 minutes, pause the video and make a list of ways you use technology in your classroom. After you're done with that, or maybe simultaneously, some scratch work, take some time to make another list of ways you could use technology in your classroom?
So what are you not doing that you think you could do?
Yeah. Sky's the limit. Think back to that toilet. What if technology could do what you wanted to do where there were no barriers? What could you do? And I'm going to give you one last brainstorming here. What does it mean to use technology? We just asked you some questions about using technology in the classroom, but go back to your list. And now we want you to just take some time to think, what does it mean to use technology? Before you go on to the other slides, please take a second to write this down as well.
So now that you've written this down and you have your ideas, we want to sort of talk about what is your definition of use? What was your definition of use? So if you'll go over to the discussion board that goes with this presentation, and you have to be signed in to the conference to do this, and you go to our presentation. This is what it looks like for me. It might look a little different for you being an attendee. But if you scroll down, you should see something that says join discussion. Now the discussion hasn't actually been opened yet because we're pre-recording this, but once the discussion has been opened, you'll be able to enter into the discussion and type responses. And Angie and I will be actively managing this and commenting back and helping you out as long as there's people discussing. If nobody has anything to discuss, we won't have a lot to say. So back to your definition of use. Are you engaging with the technology, or are you just showing pictures to your students? Are your students engaging with the technology? So we would ask the general population at this point, how many of you are using technology to make your class more interactive or to help students learn? Or are you just trying to give them a different way of seeing what's going on in your classroom, perhaps to keep their interest? It's critical to remember that these are just tools. Technology will never replace a highly effective teacher. And effective teaching is about engaging your students with worthwhile mathematical tasks in a way that'll help them develop a deep understanding of mathematical concepts. Okay, so you want to leverage the technology as a tool to support that student engagement and learning, but not as an end unto itself. Angie, do you want to talk about productively struggling with math?
Yeah, sure. So in using the technology, we also want to think of ways to promote productive struggles. So what I mean by that is that students are actually not just getting the answer fast. It's actually kind of the opposite of that. Students are taking some time to struggle and do math and try to figure it out, but making progress at the same time. So it's productive in that they're not just going to doing the same thing over and over and over again. They're like, oh, I tried this. This didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let me try something else. Let me keep going. And how can we use technology to help us with that? So students are actually engaging with the technology, using it to help them make progress on mathematics, on problem solving, and to not give up, to also then lead to some persistence to be able to get there and solve problems.
So this slide and the next slide show different versions of what does it mean to use technology versus integrate technology. So are you just using it? That would be the left-hand column. Or are you integrating it? Are you just putting it there because it happens to exist, or it's in your classroom, or you think you're supposed to be using it? Or are you actually engaging the students, supporting your curricular goals, encouraging higher order thinking skills? And you can pause this if you want to read this whole list, and I'll go to the next slide. Is it used by individuals working alone, or is it helping with collaboration and communication? So what that does is that brings us to a thought on what is our ultimate goal? Well, we want to promote engaging math and technology pedagogies in the classroom. We want all of our instructional strategies to have a purpose in getting our students to think and better understand the materials. So how can we do this? One way is by increasing the collaboration and communication of our students through technology. So, for example, when planning to integrate technology into a lesson, educators can take into account the technology knowledge that the students will need, the mathematical content knowledge they need, and then the best practices for teaching both the technology and the math. So if you know TPAC or PCK, those theories, those learning theories behind pedagogical content knowledge, technology, then this will make sense to you. If you don't know it, you could Google TPAC, TPACK, and read all about it. But we're trying to get our students actively involved in their own learning. It keeps their interest and it helps them learn better. Angie, did you have anything you wanted to say on this?
No, but I did want to add one thing. If you can go back like to the last use it slide.
Yep.
Okay, so I wanted to point out one thing in here, and I actually can turn my camera on for a second. And that is something that in math classes, I think we often fall into is the second to last one on this slide. Thinking about everything Cindy just said, is technology used to just deliver information? Now, it doesn't mean it can't be used partly to deliver information, but also think of that integration part is used to construct and build knowledge. So not only to deliver, but also can we think about integrating it into what we're doing so it can help our students make sense of what's going on, and that engaging with rich mathematics, that sense making, that collaboration that Cindy pointed out. I want to point this one out because often that people think, oh, I'm using the technology in my classroom because I had a PowerPoint. But how can you go beyond that and also think about constructing and building? And I think this leads really nicely to the next couple of slides where Cindy's going to give us some different collaboration and communication skills. So feel free to even screenshot this slide and to think about how can you move from using to integration.
On this slide, my computer is slow and having trouble catching up with me. I'm hitting buttons faster than my computer can keep up. I put a bunch of Web 2.0 tools. Now, as anybody who uses Web 2.0 tools knows, they're free, but they also might not stick around. So what might be there one day could be gone the next day. A lot of times these are small tools that people have created and they're hoping that they'll go viral and everybody will use it. And some of them have, and then they get purchased by bigger companies. So some of these are still around, some might not be around anymore. I'll show you one or two, but go ahead and explore Web 2.0 tools. What tools will help your students collaborate and communicate with each other? One of the things I like to do is ask the students what they're using. So if I gave them a group project and said, you need to collaborate on this, you can use any tool you want, what do they end up doing? Some students are just going to text, some will use WhatsApp or another communication tool. Some will want to do video. Some will want to do a Google Jamboard. So ask your students what they want to use and see if you can't facilitate that then in the classroom and share that with the other students, because what one student knows, the rest of the class might not know. So get these technologies in the students' hands and take them from the students and share them with the rest of the class as well.
And I will add, having a 10-year-old and 14-year-old in my house, that how they collaborate and communicate changes. And it might even change, like maybe you had these students a week ago and asked them, or 2 weeks ago, ask them again, because they're going to find out what's new. And I know in our house, a 14-year-old's into TikTok, and the 10-year-old is like, that is so 2020. Like, and it's like, I can't believe that anybody still uses that. So, and this, 2 weeks ago, he was like, I can't believe you guys don't watch TikTok. Like, this is how we need to start advertising. This is how we sort of talk to each other. So our slide here is a place to start, but Cindy's tip on asking your students, and ask them often how they're communicating and collaborating, because it's changing faster than I can keep track of in my own household, much less in my classrooms.
So Bauer and Torrington published in 2020 a typology of free web-based learning technologies. And I couldn't get a really clear shot of it, so it might be a little blurry. I do have it, the references at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, the link to this. But basically, there's different types of free web-based learning technologies that you want to try. And one of the things that I always say is don't try it all, just try one new thing at a time. You don't want to overwhelm yourself and you don't want to overwhelm your learners. But what is the outcome you're trying to achieve? What are your learning goals? What are your objectives? And what is going to be the best type of tool to get you where you need to be? So do you want a digital storytelling tool? Or do you want a something that the students can draw a 3D model on? Or do you just want a discussion? And is it a synchronous discussion or an asynchronous discussion? Is there video streaming? I know Flipgrid became really popular on discussion boards for a while. The students could just talk their answer and didn't have to sit here and type it all out. And they could just speak their answer to each other, listen to each other's videos, and respond further with another video or with a typed comment. So think about that and think about all the different types of tools and what is going to best help you reach your learning objectives and goals.
Some questions to ask yourself. And again, this might be a good time to pause the video afterwards to think about it, to go to the discussion board. And once that is up, I know we're doing this beforehand, so we can't point out any discussions there, but go talk with each other. Some questions to ask yourself. What do you want your students to be able to do? Do your students have reliable internet access, or do they need to be able to work offline? That goes back to our goal of the being equitable. Do you need to make something so they can maybe go to the internet to get something quickly, but then work offline before they go back and put it online? That will depend on where you are. I'm in Arizona. I am very close to the Hopi Reservation and the Navajo Reservation. They don't have internet access at their homes. It's something we need to think about very closely when we're working with Native American students. Do you need to assess your students' collaboration? That might mean if they do have internet access, they need to record their sessions. Or do you need to be able to pop in and kind of listen? I know after this, I'm meeting with students via Zoom for office hours, so I can kind of watch their collaboration. And then there are other times when they work on their own and do that separately too. But if you need to assess that, what are you going to do to set that up to be able to assess their collaboration? Can you use technology in an authentic way so you can model how it can be used in K-16 schools? This is thinking for future teachers. Are you teaching future teachers? Are you needing to model that in a way that's more than just that better, faster, easier, that engagement, that collaboration, that way that gives you access to what the students are thinking? Do you need to use a content specific or a content neutral web source? So this might be maybe Desmos is a very mathy web source. Maybe you need to insert graphs into what you're doing. And Desmos so far is free and open source. Maybe that's a great thing for you to be able to use in your classroom because you want to do those math graphs. Maybe you want it completely content neutral, like a Jamboard, so anybody can use it. Doesn't matter what their subject area is. You don't need to put in any fancy graphs. You want it just any content. So those are some things to ask yourself every time you're thinking about integrating and not just using technology in your classroom. How do we use these with mathematics? I kind of started a little bit on this, but I'll keep going. Again, go back to your students as a resource. Ask them how they're communicating with each other, how they're collaborating, and even what tools they're using to do their mathematics. There might be something new out there that they found from their friends. They might be talking to each other with Discord. They might be found a cool free open source tool where they can insert graphs in a text. I don't know if that exists or not, but it could be out there. They tend to find it before we do. And then you can actually integrate that into your own teaching as well. And also give them some options so they can decide what strategy they want to use. Maybe have that be an assignment, have them explore the technologies and how to integrate it and show you. You can have that be an assignment to have them show you and model how to integrate and challenge them to go beyond just using and integrating. We do put a caveat in here in your classrooms. We've given you a ton of information. You might want to just think of one new thing at a time. At a time might be per semester, or it might be per unit, per day, whatever you're comfortable with, but don't think you have to do everything. Just try kind of baby steps. So you actually do integrate versus just using. Because I think if you try too much at once, we end up just kind of doing the bare minimum, just using for that better, faster, easier. Talk about the challenges we found, and then I'll hand it off to Cindy to talk a little bit about how we can all help each other from here. Some challenges we found in doing our research. This is was supposed to be more of a workshop, which is why there's a lot of pauses, and it was going to be very interactive, hands-on. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. But from some research, we have found challenges that instructors, professors, teachers have all found. One, time. Don't have enough time to think about how to integrate these. I do want it just to be better, faster, easier. Well, challenge yourself to do that just one extra thing. Make a little bit of time. Don't make it overwhelming for yourself. But we do recognize that can be a challenge there. Technology reliability when tech doesn't work. This past year, we've probably all really learned that we always have to have a backup plan. We can say we're going to be using something. Maybe we're going to show something, a really cool video, and our video doesn't work on Zoom. Like, what do we have as our backup plan? That is a challenge, but make sure that be willing to try it with a backup plan. Technology proficiency. There's often a steep learning curve for a lot of these technologies. Go back to that, use your students as resources. They tend to be pretty good teachers of the technology. If you feel like you've got a lot to learn, or take workshops or YouTube videos, I found as well. There's some great stuff out there. Another challenge, technology is not a seamless integration with the content. Maybe you try something and you thought this would go great. Your students would discover this with this GeoGebra little demo, and they just didn't get it. Sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes there are going to be some bumps. And remind your students that you're trying it, especially your future teachers, that you're going to try something and you're going to modify from there, whether it goes well or doesn't go well. Also, there's sometimes lack of student hardware, whether they're laptops, smartphones, iPads. I feel like this is less of a challenge these days, but it does still happen that the students don't have stuff. In our household, it's been maybe our kids have iPads from the school, but they're not working. One of my stepsons got an iPad that just didn't work. He had to bring it back to school, and they each had, I think, one time during the semester where the laptops had to go back and get replaced and fixed. Poor infrastructure and support. Maybe you have great IT at your school, maybe you don't. So we recognize that some of these are challenges. We are also very thankful of all the internet free resources and YouTube videos out there that can help us with some of these challenges. And then lastly, a distraction for your students. And this is where the integrate it versus use it will hopefully help make that less of a challenge. If you're just using it to do the same thing you were doing before, your students might be like, oh, can I get in and play Minecraft? Can I go back here and play on Facebook, whatever they do? I think that's kind of dates me. The students aren't actually doing that. But whatever might distract your students. But if you actually have them engaged with the technology and have that integrated into your lesson and have them like curious, oh, I wonder what's happening mathematically with this roller coaster here, have it be fun for them. So it's actually less of they don't want to be distracted by anything else. They're more interested in what you're doing.
So we were hoping that you all would help us and help each other by talking on the discussion board about what free and available technologies are useful in the mathematics classroom. What are you using? Some of you are in completely different countries than us, which is totally understandable. Do you have different technologies that we're not aware of? What are your students using? Is there a way for students in one country to hook up with students in another country and collaborate on something through the technology? But we want you to post on the discussion board any questions you have, things like that. But we also have a Padlet that we created that I'm going to show you on the next slide, where you can post some of these ideas too. And that way, if you're all on at the same time, maybe we can see each other working, but we'll see what happens. But we want you to invite others. So maybe you have a teacher next door or another instructor that you talk to who can share what they're using and bring additional questions on how to use those current technologies in more engaging ways. So again, even if they haven't registered for the conference, have a conversation with them and see if you can bring us more ideas of what to do. So here is the Padlet. It's a tiny URL, active learning technology, and it takes you to the same place this QR code takes you. So if you have a camera phone or an easy way to go to a QR code, you can click on the QR code, or you can type in the tiny URL. I know it's not very tiny, but I couldn't just do 3 letters. I tried ALT, and they said, nope, it's got to be at least 5 letters. So this is just one example of a way you can have your students collaborate. So by opening up the Padlet and going to the Padlet, and I actually don't have it open on my computer right now. If we were live, I would show it to you live, but you can all go to it. And you can click on the screen on the Padlet wall and type something that you want. Now, keep in mind the age of your students and whether or not they're going to put not so nice things on the board. You got to keep in mind the maturity level when you use some of these Web 2.0 tools. Or there is a way that you can track what student posts what. And so I strongly suggest that as well. Right now, it's completely anonymous, and you can post on our wall. Hopefully, you'll only post nice things. But if you know some free available technologies that you can use for active learning and technology and mathematics, go ahead and post those on the wall. And then as far as the discussion board, these are some discussion prompts that we came up with for the discussion board when it opens, and we'll put these up once we have access to that discussion board. But what technologies have you used in your classroom, and how are you defining use? So if you recall, we talked about that earlier. Are you putting the technology in the hands of the students? And then how are you doing this? How have you overcome some of the challenges that we listed, and what challenges do you still face? Can we help each other with some of these challenges? Do we have experienced teachers out there that can say, hey, when I'm in my class and I encounter this challenge, this is what I've done. So you're not just hearing from me and Angie, but we're hearing from all of you as well.
And if the discussion board, well, even if whether it goes well or doesn't go well, if you still have questions, if you want to keep in contact, we've ended this, we have a couple more slides after this, but we want to leave our emails here. So if there are questions, you can ask us. Cindy and I do a lot of traveling with our work. We would love to make connections around the world. We're both thinking future sabbaticals. So if this is really interesting to you, send us an email, send us what you're doing, send us your questions. Maybe you might even have a good article we should read, or something we should look into, or a technology that we should look up and play with and try out in our classrooms to integrate that technology. So feel free to take a screenshot, save these emails, send us an email, say hi, and make it feel a little bit more like we're in person.
The last 2 slides I wanted to show you, these were some of the content-specific mathematics resources that we mentioned with, I was going to say, is Desmos even on here? I'm looking at the list.
I don't think it is. I said it out loud. I don't think we
said it out loud
yet.
Desmos is an awesome
become very popular, right?
Yeah. GeoGebra we talked about, and I'm not even sure if that one's on here. Oops, went too far. Sorry. Anyway, these were some content-specific math resources that you could use. But like we said, we find new ones every day, and we started talking about those. In addition to content neutral ones like whiteboards, Google Jamboard, Padlet, things like that. And then here were the resources. So if you wanted that typology of free web-based learning technologies, there's the link there. And then there's a couple of other links to some of the sources that we had. So thank you so much. We're hoping that we can post the PowerPoint file in addition to this video. And Dr. Anderson is going to help us with the video. So hopefully that goes well. And thank you all for coming. And even though it wasn't a real workshop, we are going to check in daily as soon as this is posted to see what discussions pop up and see if we can't have a conversation.
Yes, and we hope to hear from you all. And hopefully in a year or less or sometime, we'll be able to meet some of you and make some research connections and some connections to how we can continue to use and integrate technology into our classrooms. So thank you. Have a good day wherever you are.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.